Okay, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. We still have people joining in, so I'm trying to admit everybody in as quickly as possible. I'm Lisa Treadwell, and we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Not that we'll have a ton of viewers, but I at least wanted to give that option to people. So if you've got friends who are maybe not Zoom on top of their Zoom game, tell them to, but they know Facebook, tell them to join in on Facebook or YouTube. It's on our Downsizing Indy page on Facebook, and on YouTube it's Indy Real Estate Experts. You see our sponsors there on the screen now. Julie's sharing a quick slideshow, so we give our sponsors some love. Some of them are actually on the meeting today. I see Dave, Holder, and Misty, Sarah. I saw Sarah come in, Sean, again. Who else? Did I miss somebody? Oh, I saw Sarah Green with Marquette is here. If you are a sponsor and you're here, go ahead and throw your contact information into the chat on the right-hand side of the screen, and just something that you've got going on at your community or your company, if you've got any specials happening, or if you're finally opened to tours, which is doubtful, but you know, if there's something unique, go ahead and throw it over there in the chat for everyone to see. Oops. More people coming in here. Yeah, so throw your information over in the chat. If you're calling in and you want to ask a question, oh, Julie, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and start with the housekeeping. I have 9:59 on my clock here. So we have some housekeeping. Your mics are muted and your cameras are turned off. I said that. If you want to turn your camera on, you're welcome to turn your camera on. Just try to keep your mics off so we can keep the background noise at a minimum. If you're calling in from your phone, it's officially 10 o'clock, so I'm getting started here. If you're calling in from your phone, *6 on your phone to ask a question. And we talked about our sponsors. If you're on here and you're a sponsor, I see Dave Holder put in there assisted living locators. Throw your contact information over in the chat with maybe your website or something you've got going on. Lisa Curris is coming in here also with assisted living locators. Yeah, so if you're a sponsor, put your contact information over there on the side. We are recording this too, and it's also being live streamed on Facebook and on YouTube. So I said earlier at like 9:45, we're live, so don't pick your nose anymore if your camera's on. My team is on here, Julie Struble and Michelle Shank. Michelle's got her Downsizing Indy background up. They do a lot of the work, most all of the work to keep this going, and especially lately since we've had to change up and make it on video and figure out how to live stream and include everyone and you know, call in and keep our sponsors, getting them as much visibility as possible and all of that. So I couldn't do without them. Thank you, ladies. We're giving away prizes. Michelle and Julie helped me. There are 2 sponsors, I think, that have giveaways. And then our team, we have a $25 Visa gift card right here. We'll put it in a little care package and mail it out to you after this event. So how you become eligible for the prizes, I think there's another Visa gift card. Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies. We're going to put a link to provide feedback from this event over in the chat. If you're calling in from your phone, we are going to screenshot so we have your number so we can include you in the drawing. You can also send me a text message. If you are on your phone, send me a text message and send me your information so you are sure to get into the drawing to win. Last month we had a couple of winners and we got some really great feedback from that. They were very happy to get their gift cards. So we will put the link over here in the chat. That's to the right of your screen. If you don't know how to pull up your chat, just go down to the bottom of the Zoom video and you'll see a little box that says chat, and you'll just click on that and it'll pop up on the right hand side of your screen if you're looking at your computer. And then tell others about the event. I'm going to guess that we will be here on Zoom again in July, unfortunately, but we're becoming very Zoom proficient. So you never know what will be new from month to month. You never know. And now we're live streaming. So, hey, all right. So we're gonna dive into our topic here. You can switch to the next slide, Julie. And this is our topic, as you guys saw probably in the paper or the invites that we sent out, or if you got a phone call from us, understanding and responding to dementia-related behaviors. And we have the Alzheimer's Association. They give these presentations. There's Hadia So. You see her with the purple background. Hey, Hadia, you can work on this and I'll just talk until you're ready. You should be able to share your screen. There you go. Wait, did you do it? Yes.
Yay, you can see my screen, right?
Tech savvy today.
Isn't it always great when technology works? The whole time they're like, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to you, Hadia. Right. If you have a question, raise your hand or put it in the chat box. I'm going to try to keep up with all of the messaging here and let people in and that sort of thing. And I'll just stop you if somebody's got a question, Hadia, or if you can see that somebody's raising their hand too, just take it over.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Hadia So, and I am one of the program managers at the Alzheimer's Association. I'm really excited because even though I've only been here about a year, I recognize names and faces on this call. So I'd say that's pretty good. I'm excited to see all of you, and I'm grateful that everyone is here for this information. I do want to say, for those of you who've already seen this presentation, I appreciate you being here. To see it again, Ralph and Molly are terrific presenters. So even if this isn't your first time, I feel like I learn something new every time. So if at any point, as Lisa said, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be here to kind of help facilitate that, but I'll let Ralph and Molly introduce themselves. Thank you again.
Okay, good morning, and thank you, Hadia and Lisa. This is Alzheimer's Brain Awareness Month in June. I don't know if you remember that, but that's what this is, and that's what we are certainly acknowledging. I want to acknowledge also the sponsors. I think it's certainly important for the sponsors to get behind us and to be able to help us share this information, this vital information that we have for everyone. In this electronic village that we're living in, I think this is going to be interesting because we usually used to speaking in people we can see directly, and I can see if there's any frowns or smiles or any lines in your head there in the above your eyes, if they have any questions. But nonetheless, we plan to have a good time. I'm Ralph Richards, and Molly and I work together. And what we do is that for the past, Molly, I guess all we can say about a quarter of a century, right? Sounds like a long time, right? We've been doing this. We've been actually advocates and speaking on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association. We're also affiliated with the Indiana University Alzheimer's Disease Center, where we do a lot of research. So we have a little information on research too. My background, to give you a little background on me, my background is in imaging sciences. Those of you don't know what that is I spent a few years in diagnostic imaging. That's X-ray, CT, the scanning, and MRI, which is magnetic resonance, as well as PET scanning, positron emission tomography. And these are all relatively, most of them are relatively new, where we can see a lot of things that go on within the brain. And it's better, much better, I think, than actually doing surgery. So it is non-invasive, and certainly it gives us what we want. Molly?
Yes. I'm a retired occupational therapist, and I think I've been retired for about 5 years. But when I was working the last 30 years of my career, I worked in long-term care. So I was the director of rehabilitation programs, and we worked a lot with patients that had memory disorders. On my last job in Western New York, I was also the memory care service line manager, which meant I was responsible for the education and training of 1,000 employees pertaining to memory disorders. I did have a team of 16 people that helped me with that education. And then I was also appointed by the governor of the state of New York, when we lived there, to be on a commission, on a council, where we looked at what people in the community needed that were taking care of loved ones that had memory issues. And through that project, I think I was on for about 8 years before we moved, they were able to raise $5 million to be able to give to the community, to be able to help them to take care of people that had memory problems, because all you know that that's a big challenge when people have to leave their jobs in order to take care of their loved ones. Normally, questions that are asked when we do presentations are, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Is there a cure for Alzheimer's disease? Questions like that. That is not our primary focus today. Our focus is on dementia-related behaviors, in which I like to think of it, behavior at the time of an unmet need, and not that people are just acting out just to be acting out. They're trying to communicate something to us. Okay, wow.
Okay, thanks, Molly. And certainly, I always say we get 50 cents for every question that you ask, every chat, I should say, and we're sending our grandkids through college, right, Molly?
Yeah.
Okay, just kidding about that. But nonetheless, we want to make it interactive. Molly and I did mention we are past, we were at one time on the board of directors of the Alzheimer's Association in our particular area in New York. And but now we are here in Indiana, the Greater Indiana Alzheimer's Association. And this program is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association. I want to certainly acknowledge that. But the topic, as Molly said, is understanding and responding to dementia-related behaviors. We know many of you have objectives, things that you've come here with that you want to take back and you want to ask, and we certainly will be available to do this. But we have expectations too. And our expectations that we want to, oh, here you go. Hey, here you go. Heidi, I'm doing good. Is by the end of today's program, we'll be able to do this. This is our expectation, is to identify common triggers for behaviors associated with dementia. This dementia is very complex, and I think it's going to take a lot of patience for us to understand it. It's going to take a lot of things that we need to make sure that we know how to handle situations differently, and not every situation will work every time. Next, we want to explain the process of assessing and identifying challenging behaviors. Oh my goodness, I know this is challenging. And you almost have to have the patience of Job to really, but I always say here, and I call everyone that I'm talking to out there today, I call you angels. You are heroes to us, because you do a lot of things that people don't want to do or can't do. But we want to list some strategies to address common dementia-related behaviors. Let me start out by giving you sort of in the neurological area to give you understanding of why people do what they do. I want you, anytime we talk about the behaviors today, I want you to remember what I'm about to say to you now. First of all of it is related to the brain. The dysfunction of the brain due to could be pathology, disease, or it could be trauma that will cause a person to do things that they shouldn't be doing. But the brain, adult brain, weighs about 3 to 4 pounds. There's about 1 billion neurons, or we call nerve cells, and an equal amount are synapses that connect these cells together, and it is distributed throughout the brain. Boy, the brain is a fantastic organ. There's a portion of the brain that covers the intellectual part, the decision-making part, and that's the frontal part of the brain. The behaviors, all that, if anything happens in that particular area, it damages that, a person will act out accordingly. On the side of the brain, you will find that it can control mobility. That's your ability to move. It will also have memory. You'll find the senses, the eyes, ears, nose, throat, hearing, tasting, touching, all those areas that's also affected. And in the back of the brain, excuse me, you have the occipital area, and that's responsible for the vision. So when we define Alzheimer's, we've defined it as a progressive, destructive, neurological disease, not a mental health disease, a neurological disease that not only affects memory and cognition, but it also affects the senses, the ability to see, hear, taste, all those things are affected. And this is important, this last part. It robs a person of their dignity and their self-esteem. Now that's important for us to know along the way as we begin to work with people with behavioral issues that's related to dementia. Now let me say something about that word dementia, because sometimes when we talk about dementia, we get it mixed up with Alzheimer's. And people ask me, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? First of all, let me just say, dementia is not a disease. Dementia is a condition. And what that means, it looks like this. This is when a person has the interference of the functionality of the brain. That is, they don't remember things as well as they used to, or they will forget things. They will forget how to put their makeup on, or how to drive to a given area. That's called dementia. It interferes with activity for daily living, ADL. Now, something has to cause that. And that's where the disease comes in. And Alzheimer's represents about 70, 80% of the dementias. So therefore, when someone says to you, well, Joe is in the hospital and has dementia, your question is, well, what disease? Because dementia is not a disease, it's a condition. It only describes that the person's having difficulty in the functionality of what they used to do ordinarily. Okay, I want to say this when I talk about the brain. There's a significant portion of the brain deep in what we call the limbic area of the brain, called the hippocampus. And in the hippocampus, you will find the portion of the brain that controls memory, long-term memory and short-term memory. Now, the characteristics of Alzheimer's, and incidentally, this disease is giving honor to Dr. Alois Alzheimer's in the early 1900s. But what it does is that the characteristics of Alzheimer's are plaques and tangles. There's a protein in the brain called the tau, T-A-U, and then there's another protein called beta amyloid. Now, beta amyloid, this is normal in the brain, but when overabundance, they collide with tau and causes difficulty and form plaques and tangles, which destroys the brain cells. So the brain cells of the brain itself goes from 3 to 4 pounds to almost about 1.5 pounds after many, many years. So just to let you know that it's a destructive, and I said it was not a mental health disease, but it has psychiatric components, because when you go deep down into the brain, then you have some psychiatric issues. So now somehow the plaques and tangles attack the hippocampus first for some strange reason. So information that's already there, long-term memory, people say, I remember those things, and you can recall them. But when what happens is that the new information does not get into the brain, and that's why people remember what they did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but they can't remember what they did or what they had to eat 2 minutes ago. So that's causing that destruction in the brain. Okay, after saying that, I want to say this. Some of the most difficult behaviors for caregivers will be, you'll see them more or less in the middle stages of this disease, the Alzheimer's. So we talk about some of the triggers. What are some of the things that actually cause these behavioral changes within us? Well, we can say pain and discomfort could be one. And when we see pain and discomfort, it could be caused by fatigue. A person's hungry, or they're thirsty, and they can't communicate it. They may have constipation. They may have a full bladder and certainly can't communicate that to you. Or room temperature, either it's too hot or too cold. These are also the things that can cause behavioral changes, and these are triggers. Secondly, being overstimulated or boredom. And that's when a person is sad, or they lost a loved one, or boredom is one, or isolation. They could have be isolated in an area and they see and talk to no one, or changes in routines. People with Alzheimer's love structure. When you change things, then it becomes more challenging. Or even the living conditions. Things are just not as they remember it. For fear and frustration, they may be unable to remember or wonder what's happening to me. Why is it that I can't remember things? Or they may experience what some people describe as brain fog. You know, they can't remember the last day of the past couple of days. So that's pretty challenging to them. And also, there's another trigger, which is unfamiliar surroundings. One of the things we certainly don't recommend, and that is that you move your loved ones with Alzheimer's from one location to the other. That then moves them into getting into different areas, and it's frustrating, and they can't really settle, and so that triggers behavioral changes. And of course, not to mention the all infamous complicated task. That is putting things together. It just means somebody just task even doing things, or even asking a question. And you ask a person, what would you like for breakfast? And that is certainly confusing to them, so you have to say, would you like eggs or would you like cereal? So you give them those choices, but certainly don't give them a lot of choices there. Okay, let's look at, we want to better understand, and we need to sort all this out. So we want to make it just as simple as we can. So we'll take the information and we'll give you some helpful steps. And these are the 4 steps we're going to help you with in addressing behavior. First of all, we want to detect and connect. That if you have a person with Alzheimer's or any form of dementia, you want to detect and connect. You want to join the person in his or her reality by trying to see the world through his or her eyes. That means if they tell you that the rug on the floor is red, then it's red. Although it is green, it's red. Try to place yourself in their reality rather than trying to change them. Understand the person's reality and context before intervening. Understand the who and the what and the where and the when and how. This is where I always suggest that you really journalize. You put journals and just document all information, time and day, a date, and also what happened before the anxiety took place, and how did the person come out of it, so that you have something that you can always dig back over time and particularly when you want to share it with your doctor. And the next thing is to approach the person calmly and respectfully. People with Alzheimer's, it's amazing how they can detect nonverbal cues from us. You know, if we're upset, they're going to realize it. If we point our fingers like this when we talk to them, or we have that real negative look on their face, they will notice this. And when you have a condescending attitude, they will pick this up. And, so we want to approach the person calmly with a smile so that they will understand you're there to help. And of course, we want to do it in a very respectful way.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, one of the things that happens with people with Alzheimer's, as the disease progresses, they lose peripheral vision. And so if you're approaching them, as Ralph said, you want to do it calmly and respectfully, you also want to do it directly from the front. Because if you talk to them from the side, they probably can't see you and don't realize that you're trying to talk to them. And they definitely don't know if you're behind them trying to say something to them. So come around to the front, make eye contact with them as you do approach them.
Thanks, Molly. And also that just brings us up to the physical needs, because there's such thing as sensory overload. If you have a person that's in any anxiety or having behavioral issues, it could be because the TV is on, the radio's on, everything is too loud, everybody's talking. Oh, by the way, they're cutting the grass outside and the sirens are going on in front. All this, they are taking all this in to the sensory part. As I mentioned, it affects the sensory part of the brain also, and it drives them into an adverse behavior. So we need to make sure that we address those issues. They have physical needs. They already have medical issues anyway. You know, as we get older, we find that we become arthritic. We find that we have abdominal issues. We have issues of our vitamin B12 diminishes. We find a lot of things that happen to us as we age. So they have medical issues. They can have hypertension. They may be on medication with side effects, and the side effects sometimes are worse than actual disease they may have. So we need to understand the medical issues that they're dealing with too. And the physical problems such as hunger, as I mentioned, and thirst. Sometimes they may not even understand what it's all about. They just feel different or strange, the hunger or thirst. You know, they could have hemorrhoids, and you'll never know that unless you do an inspecting. But there are things that they're physical needs. We have to address those needs first. Lack of social interaction. By all means, we should have social interaction, and that doesn't mean the television. That means actually with people that you could talk with and exchange ideas, or just by smiling or talking. Might be not so much as exchanging ideas, but the thing is that you want to do is make sure that you're socially interacting with them. And of course, environmental triggers for discomfort, we know. Lights are too bright, smoking, if there's anybody smoking, or there are chemical issues where the fumes from chemicals, there are also issues that we have to address that could drive a person into adverse behavior. Okay. Heidi, this is my fault here. I'm going back and forth here.
Are you clicking?
No, I'm okay now. I'm okay now.
Okay, that was it. No, go back.
Oh, okay, motion D. Okay. I think you need a PhD to kind of work this, but nonetheless, we're going to get through it. Okay. Here's another thing: addressing and understanding behaviors. First of all, you want to thirdly, you need to address the emotional needs. You focus on the person's feelings, not the person's facts. Yes, a person is repetitive. They ask you the same question over and over again. The person may be afraid and they will be on your heels at every moment of the day. All these things, they may call your name. They may focus on the person's feelings. How do they feel? And not really the facts of actually what they're doing. use your knowledge of the person's preferences to provide effective intervention. You know, what is it that the person would really want, except, you know, and to help you to provide effective intervention. And of course, you want to redirect the energy into more soothing activity. Now, a lot of times you find people with Alzheimer's, they will fiddle with their clothes, or they'll take newspaper and crumble. They'll make all kind of things. Just redirect that energy into something else more productive. Maybe one of the things they could do is fold clothes, or in helping to make cookies or whatever. Just the energy they have that they directed more positive. Let's listen to Rose and her mother who's had Alzheimer's.
She was part of the family, you know, she fold towels all day long some days. Just, you know, put them back in the basket, and then she'd give them to her, here's some more towels. And it may sound like it's cruel, but look, it kept her busy. It kept her movements going. It kept her, you know, just kept her occupied, and it made her feel wanted and that she was contributing. We created a routine for her that worked for her around her agitation and, you know, her sleep patterns. So every day she was in the same routine for the most part. And every day she did something. She was always in the kitchen every day helping do something. Sometimes she'd rinse dishes, but she was always near the kitchen sink because she spent most of her life in front of the kitchen sink. Now she was just doing it in different ways. And going for a walk, going out in the car for a drive, walking around the yard, you know, watering plants. Those are all things that she did, and we just had her continue doing them.
Okay, that was Rose giving her, you know, we need to take all the areas in which we talked about, the steps, and then at the end is to reassess it. We need to go back so we can be able to plan for the next time. So you want to go back to detecting it and connecting to see what worked and what didn't work. What do we do different the next time? You want to join the person's reality, which is very important. I know in sundowning, a person may say, I see those children in the corner talking. Do you see them? And you may not see them at all, but the person with Alzheimer's, they see it. So we want to join that person. We need to understand that person's reality. And what went well and what didn't. You know, we need to be able to do a assessment on how well things worked and how things you shouldn't say the next time. And of course, we want to make sure we understand how we can make the adjustments. Okay.
Okay. Now we want to apply these to any of the behaviors. And so the first behavior we're going to look at is anxiety or agitation. And this can be demonstrated through restlessness or pacing, distress, over-reliance on caregivers. And I think Ralph touched on all of those. And again, we want to look at the what, when, where, and how. But I'm going to read a scenario, and this is how we're going to address the issues. And this is Anne. She's a 75-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease. And she was pacing the hallways in her house in the evening saying, I need to go, I need to go. She would not stop walking, even for meals. Her family would give her sandwiches to eat while she was walking. Though she used a cane, she was getting blisters on her feet and lost weight from not eating. Her family would ask Anne to sit down, but as soon as she sat, she would immediately get up and start pacing again. Anne had worked for 40 years as a nurse on the night shift, and her agitation began every evening. Her shoes were worn and she appeared to be in pain as she walked. And so when we're thinking about these different areas with Anne, okay, we're going to address each one of those. So when we're looking at detect and connect, what do you think we should do? And if you want to chat, that's fine. I'm happy to hear your answers. But we need to detect and connect. What do you think is going on with Anne? And so some of the things that come to mind, one, it might be sundowning. And if you're not familiar with sundowning, what that is a change in behavior that happens with people with Alzheimer's as it becomes late in the day. I don't know the neurological reasons for it, But I think some of it has to do with fatigue. Some of it has to do with fear. You know, as it gets darker and there's shadows and things that are coming out, I think people become upset about that. And so that may be part of what's going on, you know, with Anne. And then also her physical needs. What are some of her physical needs? Well, she may not be able to detect hunger. And so she may have lost her appetite, but she also may have problems with her dentures. She may have sores in her mouth. You don't know unless you check these things. And maybe these are some of the reasons that she doesn't eat. Another thing, they've mentioned blisters on her feet. Well, as Anne is losing weight, her shoes may be too big. And so as she's pacing back and forth, they may be rubbing on her feet. Things that may help her when we're addressing some of these needs is that she may need more exercise in the daytime. And so as we move over to addressing some of her physical needs, her emotional needs, that may be something that's helpful. But also going back to physical needs, she may have a urinary tract infection. She may also be constipated. There's so many different things that could be going on with Anne that's causing her to be so uncomfortable. And so then you want to reassess and plan for the next time. Once you figure out what is going on, then what do you do? You know, so that when this comes up the next day, you may be able to address that.
You know, Molly, I want to mention that Lisa's asking the question,
Mhm.
should we ask specific questions? You know, one of the things we need to remember when we ask specific questions, it may be too complex for them to answer. And I don't know if you want to say any more.
Yes, I do. And so when you're asking questions, one of the things that happens with people with Alzheimer's, it takes them a long time to process the question that you ask. And so you want to make it simple and direct, but you want to repeat the question the same way the next time. You know, if you're saying, are you in pain? You don't want to say, does something hurt? Because while they're processing, are you in pain? And then you go back and say, does something hurt? Then they've got to switch gears. So, are you in pain? You pause. Are you in pain? You know, after maybe you ask that 2 or 3 times, if they don't respond, then you may change it over. You may point to the foot or whatever and address it that way. Thank you for the question. Okay, so then we reassess everything and then we move forward. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so then one of the things that is a really difficult area is confusion or suspicion. And that's not recognizing familiar people, places, or things. And people accusing others of theft and infidelity, etc. And I think being accused of theft is one of the most difficult things for caregivers. You know, when you're taking care of someone at home and they are accusing you of stealing, it usually involves valuables, money, jewelry, things like that, checkbook, which they've hidden. They don't remember that they've hidden. So they begin to accuse you of taking it. And then part of it is them not recognizing familiar people and places. And this can be so difficult for the caregiver. So I have another vignette with Anne. When Anne's family member comes to visit and evening begins, she becomes very suspicious that people are trying to get into her house and are watching her through the big picture window. She becomes suspicious of her family for not making these people go away and that they must be all in cahoots with each other. So she has that kind of sundowning. It sounds like a little bit of paranoia and not really knowing what's going on. So when we're looking at the things that we need to do with confusion and suspicion, when we want to detect and connect, we want to stay calm. You know, even though they're accusing us of stealing or whatever, apologize even if you didn't do it. Anything to calm that person down. You know, they may have misplaced the item and you want to tell them you're going to try to help them find it. And then, but it could be low blood. When you go to the physical needs, it could be low blood sugar. It could be pain. When we're looking at that, it also could be the environment. The lighting's low. There's too many shadows. You may want to close the blinds so they can't see what's going on outside. The environment may be overstimulating, it may be too much noise, and a lot of times we don't perceive the noise that they perceive. You know, we don't hear the motor running on the air conditioner. We don't hear those things, but they're so, can be so hypersensitive to it that that's very, very annoying to them. And so you want to look at the environment. You also may want to take down mirrors, and because sometimes when they pass the mirror, they don't recognize themselves and they think of somebody else that's out there looking at them, and they talk to this person in the mirror thinking that it's a new person that's trying to get in the house, and that can be very frightening to them. So you may want to remove those mirrors so that they don't have that as something that's fearful. So, and then of course, you know, you've done addressing any physical needs they might have, and the emotional needs. You want to comfort them, you want to make them feel safe, and then you reassess the plan. Okay, now aggression. Aggression can be dangerous. Aggressive behavior may be verbal or it may be physical, and it may occur apparently for no reason, or it may emerge following a trigger. One of the things I used to tell my staff is when a person starts escalating, take 5 paces backward. Slowly take 5 paces backward, because if they're going to strike out, they can't reach you with your 5 paces behind them. You don't want to do any fast movements. You want to do everything very slowly. And so I'm going to read another vignette about Ann and see what's going on with her. Ann's husband, Bill, is standing at the back of the room, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, watching television. Ann walks in and tells him sharply, "You aren't the boss here." Bill ignores the comment and continues to watch television. Ann comes closer, raises her voice, and says, "You can't tell me what to do." When Bill doesn't respond, Ann comes up to Bill, hits him on the arm with a balled up fist. Prior to her dementia symptoms, Ann was quiet. She was calm by nature and would never have exhibited this behavior. Lately, her outbursts are becoming more frequent. She continues to come at Bill, who retreats from her and locks himself in the bathroom to avoid further conflict. He does not have a cell phone with him, because both have been avid hunters. And when they were younger, they have guns in the house. But Bill has removed all the ammunition. Okay, so let's look at what's going on with aggression. What are some of the possible things that we can do to detect and connect? Again, you want to be calm, and you want to be gentle, and you want to call the person's name. And again, you want to apologize, even if you didn't do anything. And you want to acknowledge physically that it might be pain. But I'm curious as to what you think might be going on with Ann at this time, if you want to chat on that. You want to limit or remove any distractions. You want to screen the environment for excess noise, changes in the schedule, something that may have preceded and thus caused this outburst. And you want to protect everyone. And Ralph.
Yeah, Molly, I think in this stage also, you will find that the person will be combative, yes. And they will use a lot of expletives. They'll use profanity that you never heard from them before. Keep in mind, the things that they do is related to the damage that has been done to the brain. It's not something they want to do. This is something that the disease has presented itself.
Yeah, and I want to give you a real life example. This happened in a long-term care facility in their dining room. And so this guy used to be a boxer. And all of a sudden in the middle of a meal, he would get up and start punching people out. It seemed like for no apparent reason, he became aggressive. And he would do this periodically. And finally, someone realized that the elevator was near. And when the bell that you hear, that ding from the elevator rang, he thought it was the time for the next round. And so he would get up and start boxing. And so we just have to be aware of things. There was another situation where there was a train that went by the facility, and the staff didn't notice it. But every time this train would go by on the regular schedule, this guy would become very, very, very agitated. So we just have to be aware of things in the environment that we may or may not notice, but other people are very sensitive or oversensitive to these things. Okay, so you want to alert the neighbors because this can be dangerous. You want to have a positive relationship with EMT, the police department, and you want to keep a charged cell phone with you at all times. And so now we're going to hear again from Rose.
On the tough days, my husband and I would switch on. My mom had forgotten all her English and had gone back to speaking only Greek. So she just spoke Greek, and my husband doesn't speak Greek, so it was perfect. So when she was agitated and she was cussing and yelling and saying all kinds of obnoxious things, my husband couldn't understand. So to him, it didn't matter. So when she was in that mode, we'd switch off, and he'd take her for a drive. She'd stare out the window, eat fries, and she'd be fine. And it would give me a break to really decompress from some of the stuff she was saying that I know she was just saying them, their words, but I'm a human being as well, and I was taking them personally.
Okay, so to wrap up this part on aggression, they said usually associated with dementia, upsetting but not dangerous. That's not always true. It can be dangerous. Occasionally, the person is a danger to himself and others, and safety measures are necessary. You want to speak to the person's doctor about medical. You want to speak to can you hear me now? You want to speak to the doctor about any medical interventions when someone has aggressive behavior, and then call 911 when help is urgently needed.
I wonder, did you hear Rose? Rose said her mother lived in another country, came to this country. She spoke no English. And over a period of time, her English became pretty proficient. But when she had Alzheimer's, she found that she reverted back to her homeland language. And that's because the brain, it goes through what we call retrogenesis. The brain may be, again, 3 to 4 pounds, but it starts getting smaller. And then we find out that it's getting smaller, but they go back in age. It may be 85, but the brain may be at an age of a 40-year-old or a 20-year-old. So therefore, that retrogenesis, they forget all the things they learned previously, and everything they learned years ago is in long-term memory, and they remember. Okay, how are we doing out there? Any questions? I know questions have been coming in, and we've been trying. Someone's having difficulty hearing, and is there something on our part that we're doing? Or are they muted, do you think? Okay, all righty. Okay, let's look at another behavior. That's repetition. This is really interesting because my dad had vascular dementia, and he would call me all the time, and he would say the same things over and over again. He repeat words. He would repeat he would repeat jokes that he would tell me, and he would never remember. Now, I told you about the hippocampus, and I mentioned about the plaques and the tangles that blocks that area. That's what happened. It kept new information from getting into his brain.
No, the mic is finished. I can't hear.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're trying to watch here. I want to make sure that everyone can hear us here. But because you had the blockage of the hippocampus is the reason why they don't remember what they said previously. A friend of mine, when I went to visit him, we were sitting on his porch, and he was talking about a friend that we knew years ago, and he saw him at a baseball game. And he said, oh, at the baseball game, he did this and he did that. And then about 3 or 4 minutes later, he would say to me, oh, Ralph, I didn't tell you about Joe. I saw him at a baseball game. And he said the same thing over and over again. And I think that here is a perfect example of the repetition. And this is where you really need to be patient with the person, because repetition can become annoying if you let it. Let's listen to Sam Fazio.
repetition is really one of the most common and also frustrating behaviors for caregivers. It's important to really just take a minute, take a breath, and really think about how you could help that person with the answer that they're looking for. It really makes no sense to sort of bump heads with them and try to correct them or try to tell them to stop asking it, because they really can't remember that they just asked you that a minute ago. So thinking about how you could provide an answer that's reassuring, even though you might be doing it over and over and over again.
Okay, then how do we handle this? Well, first of all, we detect and connect. But before we do this, let me share a vignette on repetition. And we'll talk about Anne once again. And, you know, Anne recently has been concerned about an upcoming visit from her daughter, though her daughter Katie is not scheduled to visit for another 2 weeks. Anne has begun to repeatedly ask her husband, Bill, when will she arrive? Anne asked several times throughout the day, every day, which has begun to wear on Bill's nerves. He finds himself answering impatiently or even ignoring Anne's questions. At the same time, Anne is going to the bathroom much more frequently than she has ever before, like every 10 or 20 minutes. Now, yes, now we have to address that physical need there. Now, one of the things about repetition, it's not only asking questions over and over, but she said that she had to go to the bathroom frequently, every 10, 20 minutes. It could be she was nervous. It could be she probably couldn't remember that she went to the bathroom and going back. So there are a lot of things that could happen. So we need to address the physical needs first. And we need to, in some way, find a way to communicate with her, to let her know through that her daughter Katie is not scheduled to visit for another 2 weeks. Sometimes it's better not to tell them so soon. You know, you may want to make maybe a couple of days or so before she is to come. So then you have to address the emotional needs. And again, I mentioned that's the tough one. You know, you have to be calm. They will pick up any sarcasm or anything, and they can lash back at you if you tell them they're wrong. So you want to make sure you address emotional needs and then reassess the plan, what worked for you and what didn't work. Here's another, 60% of the people with Alzheimer's will wander. They will elope. They will run away. And if you're not careful, they may not use the normal means of going through the door. You may put locks on the door. They will go through the windows. So you stop to think 60% out of 100%, that's a lot of people wandering. When they wander, they usually don't, most of the time, don't wander too far away. The danger is when they wander in the middle of the night, especially in the wintertime, they're not adequately dressed. They may not have their medication. So there are things that we can do to prevent that. So wandering is something that we contribute to maybe things, the area that they grew up in, the home they grew up in, does not look like where they live now. So they will leave and look for that place where they used to live. Molly, I don't know if you have a story.
Yeah, I just want to say that Alzheimer's Association offers what's called Med Alert Safe Return. And so this is a program that's available to help you be able to track your loved one if, if they do wander, which Ralph said 60% of the people do wander, but with safe return, over 90% of people are found safe and healthy. I'll give an example. I had a cousin that had Alzheimer's, and his wife put locks, everything all over the place, and he still managed to get out. And so one of the times that he got out, he was found clear across town. I mean, it was a ways away at his childhood home. He was trying to get in. And that goes to what Ralph was saying with retrogenesis. the house he was living in was not familiar to him anymore. And so he may have been back in his 20s in his brain, and he wanted to get back to the house that was familiar to him when he was in his 20s. But they were able to find him. And on the third time he eloped, the police told the caregiver, his wife, that if this happened again, they were going to call adult protective. So you have to do things to make sure that your loved one is protected for their safety and so that you don't get in any kind of legal trouble.
Okay, let's listen to Beverly.
Later in this journey, and I call it a journey, he decided that he was going home to his wife. And one New Year's Eve, he looked out the window and there was a house down the street that had all the lights on, and he decided that that was his house. And it must have been, I'd say, at least 2 below zero. And he was going to leave. I had a double lock on the door, but I had left the key in, and he decided he was leaving. And I said, well, Amos, I'm your wife. No, you're not. My wife is waiting for me. And he would laugh when I said that I was his wife. So he got up and I said, Amos, I'm going to call the police if you walk out the door. And Amos, in his usual manner, said, you do what you have to do. And he walked out the door. Well, he walked out in his house shoes 2 blocks down the street. And I got in the car and drove around. It just so happened that it was a neighbor's mother, and she knew what was happening, and she talked to him, and we got him back in the car and drove him home.
So this is the reason why we need to keep a journal of what actually is going on. So in Ann's mind, a situation, you review the steps, you find, oh, these things work, these things did not work. So we want to remember those things that we did that worked, and remember the things that did not work. Keep in mind, if it worked one time, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work again. So you need to have several strategies in mind when you begin to work with a person with dementia.
Okay, let's talk about resources. And the Alzheimer's Association has many resources. There's the Alzheimer's Navigator. There's a community resource finder so that you can find all the resources in your community. There's ALZ Connect, Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Center, and then the Safety Center. One of my favorite ones is the 24-hour helpline. So you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone is always available. And they do have counselors available that speak different languages. And so English and Spanish are not the only languages that they can address. There's support groups on ALZ Find Us for people with the disease in the early stages, as well as caregivers. And there's educational programs similar to the one that you're attending, and they're available in communities nationwide. And there's also free online education. And these programs are available at training.alz.org. Plenty of resources. Okay, so there's ways that you can get involved, and you can volunteer, like Ralph and I are volunteers, and there are other volunteer opportunities. The longest day is in June this month. And then the walk to end Alzheimer's is going to be hopefully scheduled this fall if all goes well with COVID. And then you can be an advocate. You can be an advocate locally with the legislators. You can also go to Washington, D.C. And then there's Trial Match, where you can get involved in studies to, detect different things about Alzheimer's, and some of them are for caregivers. And for the specific detailed information about the dates for the walk for the different areas in the greater Indianapolis area, Hadia will be able to have those things available to you. Okay. See from Sandra.
Everyone's situation, I'm sure, is different. My mom was a shaker and a mover. She would do whatever needed to be done. She loved to cook. She can't cook anymore. You know, she loved to keep her house clean. She can't do that anymore. And it's tough. I don't have all the answers when she's sitting there and my dad's cooking. I don't always know what to do. I have to learn to be comfortable with that. And if I may say, that's a big part of this, learning to be really comfortable with your own limitations, learning to be comfortable with the fact that you don't know the answer, learning to be comfortable with you're in a situation and you think you need to give her something, but you don't know what it is. You're taking her around the flowers and she's not responding. You're taking her for a walk and she's really not there with you. I don't always know what to do, but I try.
Okay, now, I use this, first of all, let me just find, are there any questions? Lisa, thank you. I know you're asking some questions, making some comments. That's really good. Are there any more questions out there? We still have a few minutes before we conclude.
If you're on your telephone, you can hit *6 to raise your hand. If you're on your phone, just push *6 and it should work.
Okay, while we're waiting, the last part I always like to encourage people to do is this. If you are a caregiver or if you are concerned, be sure to take care of yourself. What does that look like? That means that you're getting enough rest at night, you're eating proper nutritious meals, you're taking a little respite time so you can get away from it all, so you can be refreshed to come back and work. These behaviors, dementia-related behaviors, can become very difficult. And we've seen in many cases where a person is not caring for themselves and they're a caregiver, and you find that they died long before the person with the disease. Now, I want to put on my research cap for a moment and let you know that there is some hope. Do not be in despair, do not be discouraged, particularly people in the early stages. There very soon should come out a disease-modifying medication that will slow down the progression of the beta amyloid, the way I understand it. And that means it can only be effective for persons in the early stages. Well, how do they find out what stage you're in? Well, in many cases around, there are many research facilities where they can do an evaluation, determine what stage that you're in. So don't be in despair, that there is hope on the way. Make sure you take care of yourself, that you exercise yourself, and get plenty of sleep. Molly, I think we told them more than we know.
I know, I think that wraps it up for us. Thank you, you've been a great audience.
Yeah.
You guys
Turn it back over to Lisa.
Yeah, this was really good. Are there any questions? You can type them in the chat box there or push *6 on your phone. I'm watching Facebook too to see if we have any questions. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, just type your questions in there and we'll be happy to ask them for you. Yeah, this was great. Thank you guys for all of your wealth of knowledge there.
Thank you for having us, Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay, again, we appreciate you taking time for your busy schedule to be with us. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Ralph and Mary.
Okay, so Molly.
We're going to wrap up here. Julie, are you able to put this slide up, like one of the last ones, I think? Please. Oh, here we go. Okay, so in the chat box, if you're on Zoom, Julie has put the link to give us some feedback. It's just a tiny URL. Thank goodness we don't have that big long link like last month. You can click that link that's over in your chat box to the right of your screen. If you don't see a chat box, go down to the bottom of your screen and hover. You'll see a menu there that says it's got your microphone, your video camera, security, participants, polls, and then a chat. Click on that chat and you'll find the site there, the chat box to the right, and you'll just click on that link to give us some feedback. we do pay attention to the feedback and we take your advice to heart. So, so I'm thinking that we'll be here next month on Zoom. We are at the mercy of the church, the city and state regulations, the county, and the number of people that are allowed, together. So just we're planning on being here on Zoom next month. If something changes, we'll let you know. But as you can see, we keep getting better and better at this. Okay, so one last call for questions. I see Mary and Ralph are still on here. So if you've got questions, you can raise your hand in the chat box. You can type it in the chat box. You can ask it here on Facebook or YouTube. And remember to go and click that link and give us some feedback. It'll go straight to me. So go ahead and please give us feedback. We're really interested in what you think of the program and how we're doing and what we can do to improve. Thanks again to our sponsors. I think we have a total of 3 giveaways. So, oh yeah, there we go. Oh, you put the link there. Thank you, Julie. Julie popped up. She's popped up the PowerPoint there. Give us a feedback. You'll get prizes you'll be entered into the drawing for giving us a feedback. And if you're on your phone and you can't see the URL, hit *6 and we will get you the availability to be in the drawing and to give us feedback. All right, is there anybody out there struggling? I'm looking, raise your hand on your video or *6. You're muted, you can unmute yourselves and ask a question. Door prizes include various $25 gift cards. We've got a Kroger gift card and a Visa gift card. And the link for feedback is over there in your chat box. About 3 comments up. Myrna, thank you. She says, great job. Thank you so much. Miss seeing you in person. We miss seeing you guys all in person too. I know that some of you we have listed and sold your houses within very recently. So we love helping you all. Okay. I don't see any questions. I hope somebody's not out there struggling. I can't see you or hear you. I'm not getting anything. So I'm going to go until next time, guys. We'll be back here in July. Thank you so much to the Alzheimer's Association, and Ralph and Mary did a great job. Thank you to our sponsors. Julie, you got to put the dog picture up.
Can I answer real quick? Someone came in the chat and asked how to get access to the entire PowerPoint.
I see that.
Good. Yeah. So if you want access to the PowerPoint, I know, Lisa, you recorded this session. So I'm sure that'll come via email, but on alz.org/training, which I'm going to type into the chat box, you can go there as well and just see these presentations laid out. They're recorded. And then I can also email you some of the information, Lisa, if you want to forward that along with your follow-up email.
Okay, I put the link there. Is that right? alz.org/training.
Sure is. Thank you.
Yay! You guys, thank you so much. This has been great. I got some information I wasn't aware of myself. So when we are back at the church, will there be a Zoom option? Anita, good question. And, I don't know yet. I do know that Misty Bonds with Folklore Productions, she was videotaping each event, and we're posting that on our website and on social media. So I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking that that's what we'll do again. We usually get them posted within a few days after the event. So yeah, it's great for people who don't want to leave their houses or are not able to leave their houses. Any more questions? One last round. I don't want to leave anybody hanging out there. If you do have questions, to call or text or email me. My direct cell phone is 317-246-9966. 317-246-9966. That's my cell phone. I put it in the chat box. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. And we will follow up with our prize winners once we collect all the feedback. One last call. I don't see anything else. Thank you guys so much. We miss seeing you in person. We really do. And we've enjoyed the phone conversations that we've been able to have with the folks that we've got on the phone. I know Julie and Michelle and myself have called, just trying to make sure everybody's online and able to get into the meetings. And we really, it's a ray of sunshine to speak to you guys on the phone. So thanks again to the sponsors, and thank you, Hadia. All right, we'll see you guys. Have a great afternoon.